Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Sunday, about 10:47. So yeah, I want to thank. Last night we had a really fun show at Hey Sailor. We had another Quantum show. I want to thank friends and family that came out. We had our brand new album that came out about a month ago, and that was a really great time. That was had other friends involved with that show. My friend Halsey, my friend Ronnie, they also played. We had a lot of people show up to that gig, and that was a really awesome night. Last night we didn't have wasn't the turnout that it was hoping, but it's always tough. It's tough getting people out in general, but I think it's and plus it's New Year's is coming right up, so I don't know. But we still had a good crowd, and some great friends showed up, and we had a great time. It was our first show for Quantum where we played a full night. We played a 2 hour set. We Most of the shows that we've done this year, we've been kind of sharing bills with other bands and doing like shorter sets. When we were kind of really, I guess, kind of developing our sound, we used to play gigs where we were playing for about 3 hours. We had two residency gigs a few years back that were really awesome. We had a regular residency gig at Fog Bar and Grill in Rockland, Maine, which is no longer around, and then also Threshers, which is no longer around. If that says something. But we had a really awesome gig where at Fog we used to play. We played there for about 3 years, 2 or 3 years, and we had a regular residency there, playing there every month, sometimes more than once a month. And those were 3 hour gigs, and we really had to. I don't know. We really learned a lot. I learned a lot, and we developed a different sound. I felt, and then also fast forward a few years, just a few years ago, we used to play on Sundays at Threshers, and that was a pretty awesome run because that was almost every week, and we did it for about 5 months straight, and we really played a lot, and we really had to stretch out the music and all of those things. But the past 2 years, and then this year, we've been playing a lot of shorter sets where we've been, either at like a little music festival kind of thing or playing with other bands. So we end up typically playing like, maybe a 45 minute to an hour set at the most. So it was nice to play last night where it was just us, and we got to play, a lot of material that we haven't played in a very long time, and some newer things. And we have, I don't know, I think we have different some different sides to our sound that we don't always get to play out as much as we used to. So it was nice to play some of the more mellow ambient stuff, and explore some new ground, new territory. So I really appreciate having a chance to do that, and it was a total blast. And one point that I've been thinking a lot about, just it came up a lot the last couple weeks or the last few days even, and it's something I'm thinking about all the time anyway when we're kind of performing as a band with Quantum. It's well, totally related to films. Like I've said, that movies are such a huge influence on the weird music that I write, and it's all of those things that make up a film. It's the the pacing. I typically gravitate towards films and things that have a little bit of a slow burn to them. I love the atmosphere of films, the cinematography, the editing, especially the music, obviously, the suspense, all of those things, all those elements that make up a movie. For me, why I love film so much. I had a really great experience. I went with some friends the other night, and we saw Nosferatu, Robert Eggers' new film, and I just thought it was awesome. I loved it. I think it might be my favorite adaptation of the classic book written by Bram Stoker, Dracula. And I think for me, again, I'm a huge Dracula fan. The Universal monsters are such a big source of inspiration, a deep love for me ever since I was a kid. The Wolfman, Frankenstein, Dracula. So, and I have read the novel many times growing up, and I'm actually reading it now. I'm doing an audiobook version of Bram Stoker's Dracula. After seeing Nosferatu, it made me want to immerse myself again into that world, so I started listening to the audiobook, and I got a really great copy of it or edition of it, and it's so great. It's such a classic, and I feel like Robert Eggers' version or his vision of Nosferatu is the closest thing that I've ever seen to it. It really is. Overall, like I really want to see it again. You know, my favorite for many years, and it still kind of is my favorite, but it's a tough thing to say to pick your absolute favorite, your definitive version of something, especially in this case where it's an iconic story that's been around for almost 100 years and it's been retold many times, and it's been so influential. You know, Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula for me has always been my favorite. I love, Frank Langella's Dracula. There's so many great versions of the film. Werner Herzog's Nosferatu is really great. I really think that movie is great. Mainly Klaus Kinski's portrayal of Nosferatu and the music. Sometimes I feel, to be honest, I haven't seen it in a while, but sometimes I think that movie is a little bit overly hyped because some of the dialogue in that movie is actually really kind of silly and stupid. And I think sometimes people put on such a high pedestal that they kind of like realize that, well, it's a little bit goofy, it's a little bit silly, and some of the acting, and not really in a good way. It's a little bit, yeah, it's a little bit, for all intents and purposes, the dialogue and some of the writing for that adaptation of that film is a little bit bad, and I think it gets, you know, the images and the cinematography, the music is incredible for that movie. Klaus Kinski's amazing in it, but the actual dialogue and the performances are, a little bit cheesy, a little bit. They're kind of poorly written, and I think sometimes that movie gets put on this higher pedestal than it actually is. That being said, I still think it's great. I still think it's one of the best portrayals of the classic story. And again, there's many more versions of Dracula, and the countless films that have been influenced by it. But I kind of feel I've only seen it once, Nosferatu. I really want to see it again, but my feeling was that it felt like I got the sense that, like, I don't know, the buck stops here kind of a feeling at the end of it. It just felt like it encapsulated everything. The tragedy, the complex nature of just who Dracula is as a character. And he's more of a force of nature, which I thought they did such a great job. Like, he's not literally a being per se or a character. He's like this kind of force of nature. Of course, Coppola really emphasized that aspect of it, but as Dracula being kind of this force of nature, and he's a shapeshifter. But there's something about the way Nosferatu is portrayed in this new version that I just feel goes a little bit deeper. It's tragic, it's horrific, it's beautiful. There's so many things, and it's really disturbing. There's all kinds of elements. There's the tension between sex and death and obsession. I mean, it goes into so many things. So check out the review for Nosferatu. But one of the things I was thinking about going back to music is, I when I had that experience of going to see it in the theater, we got to see it in a really beautiful theater, and it was totally immersive and just amazing. That feeling that I get when I go to a theater and it's a good happens to be a good theater, and it happens even if I go to a good go to a really nice theater and the movie's not really that great and I have issues with it, but it's still the experience is just fantastic. Case in point, we had gone to see the Hugh Grant film Heretic, which is it's good up until a point. It's good till it's not really that good anymore. I did a review on that film, but that was kind of the same thing of where I ended up having I thought the movie was very good in a lot of aspects, and especially how it started. But then it kind of lost me for various reasons, and I have the video on the channel, so if you get a chance to check it out, for the reasons I felt like I kind of checked out. But the experience itself going there was still really great. It was still that immersion. But going to see Nosferatu was next level, and I felt like I was in this new universe, and it was being immersed in this new world, new universe and it's a visual it's a visual thing. Obviously, it's all of the senses. It's an auditory experience. Where you're really escaping the everyday. It's that feeling, and it encapsulates everything. The whole your mind and body, and you're just in this new, interesting, sometimes terrifying new world. And it's just about the atmosphere. And for one of the things that I try to do, and some people might understand that or get that, but and then some people might not get it, and that's totally fine. But one of the things that I really, really try to strive to do with what I do with quantum, because I'm always saying how music, how greatly the music is inspired by film. That's I try to create that feeling when we have shows. I try to create that feeling like you're having, aside from the music part of it, you're hopefully gonna have an immersive experience. That's why I try to have, why we have a theatrical presentation. Why I use the masks and and the wigs and all of these different things to try to, I guess, convey that. It might not work all the time. People might get that, some people won't. But usually every time I go into a show, wherever it is, that's what I'm thinking of. Like creating, rather, obviously trying to create and perform the music well because it's hard and it's challenging, but trying to create it more of an experience, where you can escape into this slightly different reality. So that's for me why films are so important to me, because that's how it influences me. But anyway, I have been covering movies lately of that I got from Santa Claus this year, because apparently I was a little bit more nice than I was naughty. I was probably pretty naughty this year, like usual, like I typically am. But I did get some really nice movies from Santa Claus this year. So that's what I've been talking about as of late, as far as new videos. And today's show is on a movie that I saw probably it's probably about 2 months ago, and then I was like, okay, I need to see this on Blu-ray, and I need to eventually buy it. And that is Nicolas Cage in Longlegs. I got this from Santa Claus this year. I did a review on this movie when I saw it. It had come out on DVD, and I think it was around. It was before Thanksgiving when I saw it, but it was. It had just come out on DVD. I almost saw this in the theater. I wish I did, but I didn't. I actually had a friend tell me that this movie was terrible and tried to talk me out of it, and then I just was like, kind of put me in a bad mood, and then I didn't end up going to see it, and I regret that. But anyway, I got this. I saw it on DVD when it first came out. So I did a show. There is a show on this movie on the channel already, but I just got this on Blu-ray, and I never seen it on Blu-ray. And this is a show about this little nugget right here of horror goodness. And again, it's I've said it probably a billion times, but again, watching a movie that I've seen previously on DVD or what have you, even it's happened to me a lot in with movies that I've seen in a theater. Watching it, although I prefer seeing a movie in the theater, to me that's usually the best. But I have to say, watching it on Blu-ray, this is a beautiful edition of this really really awesome movie. It was like watching for the first time. I mean the transfer is beautiful, the sound design, everything about this movie from a technical standpoint is just fantastic. Um, it was directed by Oz Perkins, Anthony Perkins's son from Psycho fame, of course. Amazing cast: Nicolas Cage, who plays Longlegs, Micah Monroe, who is just fantastic in this film, and also Blair Underwood. He is another fantastic character actor who has been around for many years. I really totally dig this movie. I think it's awesome. It's it's a real interesting blending of styles. I think it's a detective story. It's definitely a serial killer movie. It definitely has, and it's been described this way a lot, and I think it's a good, a real, it's pretty accurate. It's got a serious Silence of the Lambs vibe to it, big time, and Seven, I think. But it has more of a. I feel like it's got that classic vibe of what Silence of the Lambs achieved when it came out in the '90s. Directed by Jonathan Demme. One a masterpiece of a film. It's got that vibe to it, but at the same time, and Oz Perkins has said that he wanted to create a movie that kind of brought that feeling to the public again because he felt that it's been years since a movie like that came out. I mean, really, and that's pretty accurate because when Seven came out, and then obviously when Silence of the Lambs came out, there hasn't been a film like that that kind of created that mood or that atmosphere or that tension in quite a few years. And this does that, but it again it has it takes a tremendous influence from those movies without a doubt. But it's unique. It goes into much much different territory. It kind of blends other genres. I feel it has a '70s horror vibe to it. I think, and it has this real kind of grainy, dirty kind of vibe to it, which again I'm all about those decades and that decade especially. And it's not really, you know, there's very little gore in this film. There's maybe one or two scenes where it's pretty horrific and disturbing, but for the most part, it's all about kind of the tension building. The Hitchcock way of creating a thriller. This film is a thriller, I think, first and foremost. The other thing that I love about this movie is it really, by the third act, it moves into a totally different vibe. It becomes very much a supernatural film, which I thought was really unique because really watching this whole film up until the third act, you kind of feel like, okay, this is a film that's kind of set in real world times, or like a real world scenario. It takes place in the '90s, which is kind of an interesting time period. It starts off in the '70s and goes into the '90s, so it's kind of an interesting time frame which we don't really see that much. But it has this real kind of miraculous shift in the tone and even the genre, which I thought was something I didn't really see. It's not very predictable that way, and it's surprising. It's also kind of funny. There's some funny moments in this movie, and I think Nicolas Cage in this film is completely terrifying. I think he is kind of the epitome of evil. There is a scene where he is like an interrogation scene with Nicolas Cage, where his dialogue is just so I don't know, demented and erratic and insane. He his character Longlegs kind of takes on this vibe of being like a cult leader. He definitely has like a Charles Manson kind of vibe, and it's an interesting thing because it's centered on this character who is definitely connected to all of these like really grisly murders that are going on, but he actually does not. He is not actually fully responsible for committing these acts. So it's really interesting that he is kind of the second hand. He has this like to a degree like a second hand kind of connection to the crimes, and you are given this sense, by the second act that there are other parties or other people that are also involved in this murderous crime killing spree. So it's very interesting, and it also involves whole families that are being killed and massacred, and it has throughout the film. Again, it's got such a level of suspense to it, and it's got like this sense of doom throughout the entire film, and it has this really intense sense of dread from the opening frame. The cinematography for this film is just incredible. The use of music is really fantastic. It has this very minimalist kind of approach to it, but it really, for me at least, it pulled me in, and I was in it to win it. And I felt I this was only my second time watching this film, and I have to say I think I enjoyed it even more this time. Again, it doesn't hurt things that it really helps things seeing it on Blu-ray because it's a beautiful transfer. It and it's a very slow movie. It's a very slow burn film, and again, that's what overall that's kind of what I'm drawn to. I love the trashy, over the top exploitation genre where it can be, everything's coming at you. It's so ridiculous, and it's like, all of this stuff coming at you the whole time. But this is really, but naturally, I kind of gravitate towards films that just have this, it's like putting out a fishing line and you're waiting and waiting, and then there's a little hook, and then you're pulling it in because you're getting that tension. That kind of thing of where it's a slow burn and you're slowly getting pulled in piece by piece, segment by segment. You're getting, there's not a whole lot of dialogue even in this film, and especially the first half. You're just kind of getting pulled in, and you're getting, enough information to keep you very interested and to want to discover what's going to happen next. And I thought they did a really great job with that, with the editing of this film, the pacing, extremely. And again, I've said too, the biggest selling point for me for a film is the atmosphere. Even if a movie is not very good, if it has really good atmosphere, I am probably going to end up really liking that movie or loving that movie. This movie is all about the atmosphere, which I think is really awesome. And again, it's a really interesting blend of styles. It's a suspense thriller, but then it is a supernatural horror film. But you don't really know that that's kind of where it's going to go until kind of the end. And even that could be a thing of where it could be still just a psychological perception of how these crimes are being committed, or how they are being planned to a degree. So it's very, very cool, very atmospheric. Oz Perkins is great. He has done, I think he did another film, Black Coat's Daughter. I think that's what it's called. And I definitely want to see it. I have not seen any other work of Oz Perkins, but I think that this movie is, I want to keep my eye on him as a director. I think he has a real unique perception as a filmmaker, and I love his aesthetic. So it really makes me want to pay attention to see to him as a director, and to see what he does next. And Nicolas Cage, I'm a huge fan of Nicolas Cage. He's my favorite actor, overall. I've always been, ever since I saw Wild at Heart, which was my favorite David Lynch, or I should say, my favorite David Lynch film is Blue Velvet, but my first film of his and my first movie that I saw with Nicolas Cage was Wild at Heart, and that is a masterpiece. I saw that when I was in middle school, and that movie just totally disturbed me, and I was just like, what is this? I've never seen anything like this that was so visceral and disturbing. It was also the first film I ever saw with Willem Dafoe. So it was, kind of a game changing experience for me. And ever since then, Nicolas Cage overall, and especially now, I've just grown to love him more and more. He's my favorite actor around. I think he can do anything. When he can do something so terrifying and horrific as playing this character known as Longlegs, and then do a film like Pig, which is a masterpiece a few years ago. Where wait, this is the same guy? Like it's unbelievable. So he's my favorite without a doubt. And so this movie is just another example of how an actor can really transform himself, and you can't recognize him. The whole cast in this film is just fantastic. I love the pacing. Can't recommend this movie enough. It is definitely a. I wish I did see it in a theater, because it really is a. It's a little bit more than a movie. I feel like it's a little bit more of an experience. I think it's definitely one of the best movies I've seen of this year. It came out in 2024, and yeah, it's great. And I enjoyed it more this time. Looking forward to watching it eventually more in the future, now that I own it. And thank you to Santa Claus. So yeah, thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.